Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ed Gilmore. I just want to thank everybody for joining the Grapevine Virtual Conference. Our featured company today is Altigen Communications. Altigen trades under the ticker symbol of ATGN. A little bit of background on Altigen. Altigen is a leading Microsoft cloud solutions provider delivering fully managed unified communication services, combining hosted Skype for business, advanced cloud PBX, and innovative cloud contact center applications, with seamless integration into Office 365 for small to medium businesses and mid to large size enterprises. On today's call, we're pleased to welcome Mr. Jerry Fleming. Jerry is the CEO of Altigen, and Jerry will be providing a presentation and overview of the company's business and more about his leadership in turning Altigen around into a successful software as a service company. At the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions via the chat functionality of the webcast. To access the chat, please make sure to download and join the webcast via Microsoft Teams application or on your web browser. The URL for that, if you don't have it, is available in the email invitation that was sent out by Grapevine. As a reminder, today's call is being recorded and may be distributed. Also, please note the information contained in this call is provided as is for educational informational purposes only and should not serve as the basis for any trading or investing decisions. Little Grapevine makes no representations and disclaims all express, implied, and statutory warranties of any kind to any viewer or third party. Neither Little Grapevine nor its affiliates make any endorsement of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this call should be construed as investment advice. Please be aware that Little Grapevine, friends, family members, affiliates, as well as other participants in this call may own, buy, and/or sell shares of companies mentioned in this call and on the website. Investors should undertake their own due diligence and carefully evaluate all companies before investing. And please see littlegrapevine.com for a copy of these terms and conditions. Finally, after today's call, additional information and videos about Altigen can be found on the Little Grapevine website, available at www.littlegrapevine.com. Please check back periodically over the next few months for updates on Altigen on the company's profile page. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce CEO Jerry Fleming. Jerry, before we get started, I thought it might be helpful to have you give a little bit of your background and history with the company.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Ed. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the virtual conference today. My name is Jerry Fleming. I'm CEO of Altigen. And I was informed and prefer to work this way. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know. I don't want to be one-way talking at you for a whole long time. So yeah, just a little background on myself. After I got out of school, I basically decided that I wanted to get into the computer business, so started working for a small company locally in St. Louis, where I'm from, and did that for a couple of years, and then started getting into larger companies. So after that, I spent 5 years at Computer Associates, really when they were just getting started, when Charles Wong, if anybody knows CA or CAI now, just when he was really ramping that business up. And yeah, then from there, really focus on enterprise software companies prior to, so fast forward, so I don't give you guys the TMI. And I've been at Altigen now for about 12 years, excuse me. And for the 10 years prior, I think we'll call this really relevant experience. I was at a company by the name of Interactive Intelligence, generally doing the same things that Altigen was doing, but on a much larger scale, targeting larger enterprises. And for those of you who might have heard of Interactive Intelligence, or IN, they were sold for about $1 billion to Genesis just about a year or so ago. But when I came over to Altigen, and both companies started at the same time, and I was running sales from the start at Interactive Intelligence. Altigen was a little under $20 million in revenue, and Interactive Intelligence, we were approaching $100 million. And so there's certainly a reason why one company, sort of doing the same things, being in business about the same amount of time, why was there such a gap in the performance? And that's really what I was focusing on in the early years. And I can tell you what the issues were primarily is that at Interactive Intelligence, we focused on much larger enterprises, companies actually having budgets and willing to spend money, versus Altigen focusing on very small businesses. And I'll call them, generally speaking, perpetually small businesses. which to me is not a good business model. So one of the things I wanted to get started on right away when I came over to Altigen was to get rid of the technology constraints that forced us into a small business environment. And I'll talk about this in the presentation a little bit, so don't want to talk too much about the same things. So I'll defer the details there, but we got rid of a lot of the technology requirements, and then I found out that, and many of you have been in business for a while, probably know what much more important than the technology constraints are the people constraints. And we had a founder that was, well, I don't have anything good to say about him, so I'll try to stay away from that. But a real blocker to the business. And unfortunately, it took me about 5 years or so, to get him ushered out of the business so we could start executing on our business plan. So that really slowed us down quite a bit. But once I was finally able to get the founder out of the business, which wasn't easy because he was founder, CEO, and chairman of the board, so that's why it took so long to finally get in charge and get some people in here that that can execute and understand the strategy and can execute on the vision. Then we started moving. Pretty much immediately started. Once we got rid of all of our hardware technology constraints, we said, look, it was pretty obvious at the time, and this was about 2014, I think. The world is moving to the cloud, which the founder did not understand. And I think even companies like ShoreTel and Toshiba and other companies that were manufacturing PBX systems, even Avaya, were just late to the game, didn't get that part. And now we're either out of business or in Chapter 11 or some other underperforming capacity. So our job was to get our product into the cloud, start a recurring revenue business, and more importantly, monthly recurring revenue business, doing the same thing, essentially, selling business phone systems. So all the fancy, nice fancy lead-in that Ed gave on our, on the description of Altigen, we sell business phone systems, and we sell them from the cloud. And what that means simply is rather than packaging up a bunch of equipment and things like that, that I have to drive a truck out to and deliver to some company's office, we simply make our solution available as a cloud service. The only thing they need to do is get some telephones, and we use Polycom phones, get some telephones and subscribe to our service, and they're up and running. So their costs are much lower, no CapEx, or virtually no CapEx other than the telephones, no IT support, no hardware purchases, no electrical and cooling in a data center, all that business. So we did that with our PBX and we're still doing it with our PBX, where a lot of our cloud revenue is coming from, and started then working on the Microsoft platform. I think it might be better when I talk about our strategy on the Microsoft platform to get into the slide deck, because it gets a little complicated, and the reason for that, it's not just as easy as saying we're Microsoft, or we work with Microsoft, because a lot of companies say that. We have a unique way we're doing this in order to be successful in the market. So if I'll just pause now for any questions before I get into the PowerPoint presentation.
Hey, Jerry, this is Ed. Would you like people to ask questions via audio or via chat? What's your preference?
Yeah, I don't know how many folks we have on here, but I think, if folks want to me, it's easier via audio, but, let's say while we have a Q&A session, audio is good. If it's during the presentation, chat might be better, and then we can address them, at a stopping point, if that works for everybody.
Sounds good. We've got about 30 people on the line right now, and I don't see any questions in the chat so far.
Okay. All right. Let me then go ahead and go into screen share mode. Okay. So Ed, I'll let you be the spokesperson. Can you see the desktop?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So I'll just go ahead and just roll into the company background now, at least, our current positioning. So today, coming from this small business, selling phone systems to small companies on premise, we're evolving and have evolved, and will continue to do so as a provider of unified communications as a service solutions based on the Microsoft platform. And really what that fancy tagline means is, and I think everyone's aware of this just with their mobile phones, is communication is not just about voice anymore. It's about web chats and SMS and email, and all sorts of other communications, social media, right, that are not just voice, but still come into organizations that need to be dealt with. And so that's what unified communications, that's what that fancy title stands for, to be able to capture those things. So we are headquartered in Silicon Valley, just outside of San Jose, been in business for just about 25 years now. And we have about 2,500 current customers, many of them still on premises. I'll talk about that a little bit as we're sort of migrating those folks, those organizations to our cloud platform. Let's see if I can minimize this guy here. Okay. So I've been asked by some of the shareholders just to point out the sort of the stock ownership construction. We don't have much in terms of institutional ownership at the moment, but we have a lot of private investors. And I would say, unless some of the folks now as private investors coming on through CAP and other organizations are, consider institutional, but I'll say private right now for the most part. I happen to own 15%, or just don't happen to own 15%, do own 15%. My management team has another 12%, and then the Altigen employees have 6% of the stock. So we finished last year, which is September of 2018. So we're coming up on our year end this year as well. Finished just over $10 million in revenue, bringing just over 1.1 in net income, and our cash balance stood at $3 million at that time. So we still are pretty heavily engineering oriented to build products that we can be selling. So we have nearly half of our employees that are in engineering. The rest are 9 people in support, obviously responsible once we deliver a product to make sure that it's working and dealing with any customer issues that crop up. And then the final 19 folks are in accounting, sales and marketing, those roles, mostly customer-facing roles. Okay, so from a summary perspective, there's a lot of numbers on here. Just try to focus on a couple of them, and really the leftmost numerical column, which is the 9 months ending June 30 for us in 2019. And as you guys can see, and we can compare that to FY18 and how we're tracking. So we're certainly tracking, in all categories, ahead of last year. But we did just about $8 million in the first 3 quarters versus 10 last year. Our cost of revenues are pretty consistent, as our gross margins. I can talk about the gross margins in a moment, where those are slightly down. And they'll go slightly down, but this is not a concern because it's our product mix that's driving that. Our operating expenses, as everyone can see, are in line. Our EBITDA is in good shape. We're continue to make money, and we're building our cash position. So I think those are the highlights. There are a couple of things that stand out that people have questions about, particularly if you're not familiar with the company. And say, one will be this big $9.84 million in net income in FY18. Yes, it's an anomaly. It's because we had a lot of net operating loss carry forwards that our accounting firm said that needed to be consolidated, and we had to actually report that as net income, and then sort of amortize that as we take the use that offset our income taxes going forward. So I'll take that to the bottom line here, where we have NOLs of over $52 million on a federal basis and nearly $23 million on a state basis, and we actually have some R&D tax credits to go along with that. And those will last us for a little while, but some of our friendly shareholders tell us, boy, the faster you make the money, the faster you can use those tax credits than operating loss carry forward numbers that you've built up to not pay as much in income tax, of course. So I'll just pause here for a moment, since there are a lot of numbers here, and see if there are any questions. And perhaps it is easier, Ed. I can no longer, so I'm doing the desktop share. I don't know if you're able to see the chat window. It might be easier if folks have a request to do via chat that Ed could kind of then proctor for us. Would that work out?
Sure, Jerry, that sounds good.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions going forward, and it doesn't sound like there are any of them. Okay, so I'll go ahead and proceed, but if you have any, please ask Ed at any time, then you can notify. That way I don't think it'll be very disruptive for the folks here in the conference. So I do want to point out that now that we're making money, we are one of the pieces of our capital allocation strategy is how can we actually invest our cash, to generate greater returns. So on August 7th, we acquired, or at least announced the acquisition of the customer base of a company called Workspace Communications, who's very much like Altigen in terms of offering hosted Microsoft Unified Communications solutions and primarily focusing on Skype for Business. And so pretty much of a performance-based acquisition. And the terms of transactions is that, this transaction, I should say, is we are going to pay Workspace 1.6 times the annual revenue we receive only upon having the customer sign a contract with Altigen. So to give you an idea, someone's doing, let's call it a little over $8,000 a month. That would work out to be $100K a year, and we would sign them to a 3-year contract. We would pay Workspace for that $100K, $160K, and then we're done with that. Now the customer's on our platform with us, and we continue to generate the revenue and the returns off that customer. Now they're all not at $8,000. A lot of them are smaller, but it's the same metrics and the same requirements apply that the customer needs to sign contract with Altigen. Okay. So this is a kind of a dicey slide, but it talks really about I say dicey because I get in trouble for this sometimes, that some of the shareholders think it's too much detail, but I'm just going to kind of go over it just so you guys understand. And I think it is important. Why is Altigen interesting now? You've been around for 25 years. You've been public for 19 years. Why should I care now? Because we are really quite a bit of a different company, and I certainly understand why somebody would think that. And I think it's perfectly investigated. Why should I get these guys now? What's the difference? So on the left, just a bunch of stuff up here, and then the stuff is what we used to sell. So we used to sell all those things look like keyboards. Yeah, we used to sell those. And a big giant thing that looks like this oversized computer server. Yep, we used to sell that. And those ugly telephones, we used to sell those. That was our solution. And we packaged that all up. Software was running on the server. That's what we go out and sell to an example of a 30-person company. I would sell that pile of stuff to that 30-person company for about $15,000 or $20,000 upfront. That was your only option. And the original Altigen business model was, oh, by the way, we don't actually want them to pay us any maintenance, so we'll just do a one-time sale. We'll never collect another dime from that customer. That's before I got here. Just want to make sure we're clear on that one. So I certainly changed that. But as we went forward, as you can see, that's a horrible business model, right? And I don't even think it's 20/20 hindsight is we hate to call it that. It should have been evident from the time. But that's not what we're doing anymore. So going forward and what we do today and what we've done for the last several years, we said, look, this is a whole new world. People don't want to buy that kind of stuff. They want everything in the cloud. They don't want CapEx. So we deploy all of our solutions in a data center, whether it's our software or the Microsoft software that we support. We bring in our own internet-based telephony service, which is referred to in our industry as SIP trunks. And I'll just, a SIP trunk, as you'll see on my little glossary here, is nothing more than being able to bring telephone service into your internet connection, just like anybody at home, might have a triple play, right, with their television, their phone, and their internet all coming across that same wire. It's the same concept, except we're doing this in the business environment. No, we don't have to wire anything. We write on top of whatever internet service they have, whether it's AT&T or Charter or Comcast or what have you. So we don't have to worry about that. We just worry about delivering the service over a high-speed internet connection. So the only thing the customer within our solution, and any cloud solution, honestly, and for phone systems, they just need to put phones in the desktops. I would say in today's world, about half of the customers don't do that. They just use a headset. So that's changed as well, where historically everybody had a phone on their desktop. Today, you'll see about half of the people with phones and about half the people with headsets. So in addition to our all software solutions, as Ed was talking at the top of the call, we also have advanced contact center solutions that we deliver. And just as maybe a quick explanation of contact center for those that may not be familiar, when it's called into a hotel or airline's reservation center, and when you call in, you're not going to connect to somebody right away. So you're going to get a message. If you call, you'll be connected to the next agent. And if it's a decent system, it'll tell you It's going to be estimated wait time of 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And if you want us to call you back and instead you won't leave it in line, we can do that if you put your number in. That's what a call center product does. That's all the call center software managing that sort of thing and determining who the next agent is, best agent to get the call. That's what Altigen does with our contact center. And our contact center sits on top of our PBX. It also works with Microsoft Skype for Business, and it works with Microsoft Teams. And if you guys aren't familiar with Skype and Teams, I have a slide a little bit later where I'll talk about those and how significant it is to be able to integrate with those platforms. Okay, so I guess I didn't realize I had some other bullet points, but I'll just let you guys see here that I think I talked through all these things, but the most important thing is the old model was hardware revenue well in excess of 90%, and the new model is currently, as we're transitioning out of those on-premise customers, recurring revenue is now in excess of 90%. So it's quite a shift, and it'll continue until the recurring revenue will be 100%. And in fact, if we get there, that's certainly what we're trying to do. Ed, are there any questions at the moment?
So far, Jerry, there's no questions.
Okay. So I'm just going to give an explanation to you guys. I know this gets a little complicated, but we do have a unique position in the marketplace because we deliver an IP PBX. So sorry, I'll throw another term out here. An IP PBX is nothing more than a business phone system, and the IP is Internet Protocol. So it simply means a business phone system that allows calls to be made or received through the internet, like everybody does today, pretty much. With our phone system, now this is the one that I showed you all that hardware that we had to cobble together. Okay. So with our PBX, we target the SMB market, and I'm going to define SMB as companies of 10 to 100 employees. And why is that? Because the larger companies are going to go with the name brand players. They're going to go with a Microsoft or a Cisco or something like that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But in addition to Altigen hosting the PBX in our own data center, we have two partners that host that same PBX, the same software in their data centers, and they integrate it with their vertical application, and they go out and sell a business solution to their customers. So in the case of ATS, they sell home services verticals. Pretty much any company that's doing home services, heating and cooling, plumbing, pest control, lawn service, that sort of thing, and they integrate with that company's back office system, so they have a completely unique solution. In the case of Fiserv, a bit bigger, they're $18 billion, and they do the same sort of thing, but they integrate the Altigen software in with all of their banking applications and go out and sell it to their customers. Things like Bank by Phone, that's still out there, our call center, and other integrations directly into Fiserv solutions to streamline the call processing. So what we also do on top of that is that we've taken all the interesting capabilities that we've built into our PBX. What I mean by interesting capabilities, generally advanced call routing capabilities in the context I was talking about, and we've integrated those with Skype and with Teams. So with being able to support the Microsoft solutions, and Skype for Business is used by very large enterprise Teams, and you see Teams phone system here. Teams is now included with Office 365, almost every Office 365 plan. In fact, all of the enterprise plans and most of the business plans. So it's very easy now for customers using Office 365 to upgrade to the Microsoft phone system. Now, we could view that as a competitor if we're dumb, or we could view this as an opportunity and let Microsoft take the PBX business, and we'll take all the applications that a company really needs to run their business and integrate it with Microsoft. And that's the path we're taking. In this case, as you can see, it's not only larger number of employees, it's a much bigger market. Unless somebody thinks Altigen's going to outsell Microsoft, then I think it's a pretty safe bet. I don't happen to think so. I think Microsoft is going to outsell everybody, and that's why we're riding their coattails with our solutions. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea, and how am I doing on time, Ed? Should I start winding this down?
Yeah, you've got about 7 more minutes on the presentation, and then we'll take some questions.
Okay. So just real quickly, that slide is simply designed to say, okay, this is for the Altigen PBX. What have you done so far, and what's the remaining opportunity? So I tried to quantify that. We can see that Altigen on our platform, we have about 9,000 subscribers. We have a whole bunch more subscribers out there that are still using our system on premise that we're trying to convert to the cloud. Same thing with ATS. They're sitting at about 7,200 subscribers, and based on the partnerships they have with those home services verticals that I had talked about, they've got about 50,000 users to target in their base. And then, the gorilla, if you will, they serve. You can see what they have installed already in the cloud. About 20 customers, 1,700 subs, and 2,500 IVR, which is bank by phone. They have another 13,000 customers using a Fiserv core software system. That means it runs the entire bank or credit union, and that represents another 500,000 endpoints. So obviously Fiserv has the biggest opportunity, and they're also the biggest player in the game, and we're the only product that they sell. So again, with Teams, I'm sure many of the folks on this call use Office 365 in their day-to-day jobs. So two of the components of Office 365, which I have highlighted in circles in the bottom, are Skype for Business and Teams. So Microsoft started with just Skype for Business. Now they're sort of replacing Skype for Business with Teams, but we're able to integrate with both. And interestingly, I have the Twitter post from Microsoft that Teams is the fastest growing business app in Microsoft's history. And we know they've grown pretty quickly with lots of different applications. So I think that is certainly something to be said for Teams and is indicative of the market opportunity. So already with Teams, it's only been out for a couple of years. They have more than 500,000 companies using Teams because they built it into 365. And they have over, I think this is the other maybe very interesting stat, there's 155 million commercial Office 365 subscribers. Those are the folks that are going to be using Teams as it's delivered free of charge, but now they can upgrade to the phone system that we can now integrate to. And they have another 80 million customers, subscribers using Skype for Business Online that's going to be replaced with Teams. So everything's really coming together with their growth and the evolution of including Teams in Office and enabling Teams to be the phone system to create an opportunity for Altigen to leverage that really tremendous number of companies using the solution. So I'm going to switch off here. I get a lot of questions about the competitive landscape. And so I'll take a look at the UCaaS, which is Unified Communications as a Service. I hope you guys can see this. If you look at that, it's pretty much, these are some of the largest technology companies in the world in a lot of respects. So it's pretty tough to compete with them. So as I mentioned, our goal, it would be foolish, and I think we'll see some of the other on this list start to drop off over time as Microsoft is more successful with Teams as a phone system. It'd be foolish for us to try to compete with any one of these companies. So instead, we're taking the opportunity to integrate with Microsoft. We view Microsoft as a partner, not a competitor, creating a head opportunity for us with Microsoft Teams that we can go leverage to upsell our applications and services to. So this market is very much in infancy. Microsoft is just getting out of the gates. So I think we're going to have not only first mover advantage as Microsoft continues to get Teams deployed, but we're quite unique in that we're one of the few service providers. And when I say service provider, I'm talking about delivering SIP trunks that also builds our own applications. So as small as Altigen is at $10 million, we actually have more we can bring to the table than any company I'm aware of to be able to support Microsoft's Teams initiative. So we'll just wind down here, just do a quick review on our historical revenue model. Now, we've talked about how we from hardware to software to the cloud, and these numbers represent that. So you can see that starting in FY15, we had very little cloud revenue. And of course, my hardware revenue, we're out of that business now. We killed it. That was going to cost me, and it did cost me on the top line revenue side, but it wasn't profitable revenue. The other two categories are SA, which is our annual recurring maintenance plan. That's 100% linked to our on-premise, or when people buy our PBX system, they buy software, they pay maintenance. That's sort of the old model. So we'll continue to see a slower decline in the SA in the software and services, and soon that will be overtaken completely by cloud. But if you look at the cloud side, we're growing our cloud at about 25% a year, and that's really what we're focused on, is to get that growing and get that growing even faster. So this slide might be maybe in the TMI category once again. I think I just wanted to give you an idea about how many customers we have overall in the cloud, how many subscribers we had. So at least at the end of September, and of course we're beyond this now, we had nearly 600 customers, average revenue of about $700, nearly 20,000 subscribers, and our average revenue per subscriber of $21. And you can see these numbers have grown every year in terms of every category. So these are all good signs when we're looking at metrics going forward about the health and let's say the future of the business. Okay, this is pretty much my final slide. As a auditor, it's important to look at some of the key metrics and we compare those to other competing companies out there, not just phone companies, but let's say SaaS companies. SaaS is simply software as a service. So our gross churn rate, for the past year, again, this is all based on 2018 data, 4.5%. Which puts us at, with our gross margins and our average revenue per subscriber, along with our churn rate, the lifetime value of a subscriber is just over $3,900 for us, and our long-term value calculation stands at 15.7. Now, how does that compare to some of the players that you guys might have seen? And so we just picked out for the last fiscal years of RingCentral 8x8 and 5.9. And how they're growing, and what their enterprise value to last 12 month sales are. And as you can see, we don't have the same cachet necessarily as companies that have been out there for a while, but we also don't have the same valuation. So we think we're quite undervalued, and as we execute, we expect to see that change. Okay. So this, I think everyone can read the key strategies as well as I can. I'm just going to stop here, Ed, and open it up for questions then.
This is sure.
Final
Thanks,
slide.
Jerry.
So, mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was done. Go ahead, please.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you, Jerry, for that. It's very insightful overview of the business. We do have a question from Maj Swedan of Geo Investing. So Maj is asking, competitors have described the market that Altigen is in as a land grab. And while that's great, can you talk a little bit about how the pricing environment has changed and maybe where you see that going?
Yeah, I think in some respects, well, I have to be a little bit granular here, and I apologize. I think what's happened for the last 5 years in the PBX business is not necessarily is what is reflective of what's going to happen going forward. And I think everybody knows it's very difficult to map out where you're going by looking in the rearview mirror. All of the stats up to now don't include Microsoft in the marketplace. So the game has completely changed, and for those folks out there that aren't smart enough to see that right now, they'll see it sooner or later. And so, yeah, Microsoft, they own the desktop. Let's face it. And unless anybody sees that changing, might have a different opinion than me. I don't see it changing. That's where they're driving. They're continuing. Google was, at some point, maybe seen as a threat. And I'm sure they're still seen as a threat. And we used to hear about Google Office overtaking Microsoft, and we can see, over the last few years, just not true. In fact, Microsoft, their market share is going up versus Google. So with Microsoft in the game, and they go out and sell their PBX they sell for $8. And if you want audio conferencing, it's $4, and then you put your phone service on top of that. So the companies, I can see why a RingCentral and 8x8 would say, Mike, it's going to get a little more competitive, no doubt, because you guys are going head to head with Microsoft, and that is a losing strategy, in my opinion. So, our job is to stay tight with Microsoft. They will get deployment after deployment after deployment. They have 155 million Office 365 subscribers. I don't know what their internal forecast is for how many they're going to convert to their phone system. But I'm pretty sure when they sit around in their own, their boardroom, it's a pretty high number. And that's what our job is, to be able to capture that, because once a company makes a decision to go with Microsoft, all the competitors, I'll just use RingCentral and 8x8 as examples, they're out. They have nothing else to sell, and we're in. We've got everything we've got to sell. So I think it's just going to be a complete change in landscape going forward.
Okay, good. Thank you. Our next question comes from Matthew, and Matthew's asking about the sales organization. So Matthew says, could you talk a little bit about the ability to build a high-performance sales organization? What's your experience there? Where is that growth coming from? And then Matthew kind of goes on to express that he has some concerns that most of the growth may be coming from low-hanging conversions, and that greenfield requires competing against more well-capitalized peers that have focused on the sales process. And Matthew continues, he thinks the customer acquisition cost would increase while revenue growth would slow. And he thinks that LTV to CAC ratio would drop when the conversion's slow. But do you have a sense of how much, and do you think you can continue to grow revenues at 20% a year after the conversion's slow?
Yeah, I think those are good questions. Matthew obviously didn't believe my competitive landscape slide because we don't compete with those companies. So right now what we're doing is, and he is right, we are converting on-premise customers to the cloud.
Correct.
It's a lot of work to do that. And the average customer is 33 users in our cloud. And so, yeah, that one is, I think we can see that there's only so many customers we have on-premise, right? So that's not our hard growth strategy. That's one, let's make as much money as we can. If you guys are familiar with the Boston Consulting Group and their matrix, that's our cash cow. The growth is going to be coming from the Microsoft solutions and compete with RingCentral. I don't know how many times I can say that. I don't compete with RingCentral. Microsoft does. So I don't care what RingCentral does, or an 8x8 or anybody else selling hosted telephony. They've got to go figure out how they're going to beat Microsoft when Microsoft already has the desktop. What we do is leverage that desktop. So if you're betting that we're not going to be effective leveraging the desktop, I wouldn't invest in our company. If you're betting that Microsoft's going to be able to beat RingCentral and Altigen's going to continue to do what we do, that's a different story. So I guess I just do the assessment. I don't think that's where the market's going, but yeah, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for the question. Our next question comes from Ralph, and Ralph is asking, Jerry, who are you competing against or with in the Teams/Office 365 space?
So right now, Microsoft doesn't have their APIs available. So we look at, there's some service providers, and I can't get into all the things that we're doing because we're under NDA with so many different companies right now with what we are doing. But we have sort of two categories of competition, if you will. One is what about other companies that are delivering SIP services into Teams? So those could be typically they're regional players that most companies like a new wave out of love. I guess that probably most folks wouldn't have heard of. And then on the other side, we have the contact center vendors that have been out for a while, and Five9 falls into that category. Genesys falls into that category. Yeah, and the very large companies, I think companies might say, yeah, I'm using that, or I'll still purchase those products for what they have global reach. That's really my main requirement. So we could see both of those, but neither one of them. On the one hand, the telcos, they don't have applications. The contact center guys, they don't have any SIP trunk services, and nobody has anything deployed in Azure, where our solutions are deployed, which is Microsoft's data center. So that's our unique niche to be able to work with the partners to be able to deploy exactly in line with what Microsoft's looking to do. That's how you get their support. So I won't say there's no competition because there's always competition. That would be a foolish thing for me to say, but we're looking to attack the competition at their weak points, not go head to head with them at their strengths.
Okay, thank you, Ralph, for that question. And we do have time for a couple more questions. So if you have a question, please feel free to send it in via the chat. In the meantime, Jerry, I'll go ahead and ask a question. I know that Altigen has a direct sales focus and also channel sales focus, but with this Teams opportunity and with the Microsoft opportunity, is there a concept of a Microsoft marketplace or app store where a small, medium business could go into Teams and kind of find the Altigen solution on their own without having to have a high-touch sales process or contact with Altigen sales?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, there is. We don't have anything in there now, but this is exactly where we're going with our SIP trunk offering starters, and then our applications just sort of bolt onto that. These are something that one of the things I can't really give you guys any more details because there's some NDAs in place as we're working on that. But let me just say this. We're certainly looking and actively pursuing a strategy and with products to get to that very high volume, no touch model. In addition to, let's say, the more sophisticated contact center applications, we just certainly have to consult with the customer, as the process. But our direct force will be focused on the larger, more consultative opportunities, where there's a little bit of mix of both. That's where the Microsoft partners really add value. And then at the low end, where there's no touch, we don't. This is where we plan to release something in that area. I will say probably in 2020.
Okay, thank you for that. Our next question comes from Ian Castle. Ian's asking, do you see any catalyst or change in the tactic to accelerate transitioning your on-premise customers to cloud?
Yes, it's a good question. We do. I don't think we've formally announced something, but we do have some programs that we're implementing right now to do that, because there is a limited lifespan. Sooner, they're not always going to be on-premise customers, right? They're either going to go to the cloud, or maybe some do nothing. But for the most part, we're interested in those that will move to the cloud and get on our cloud. So we do have some programs. I'll just call them they'll be highly incented to migrate to the Altigen cloud versus just nothing and staying on-premise, or looking at one of our competitors, in that space.
Okay, and thank you, Ian, for that question. If anyone else has a final question, please feel free to submit that now. Jerry, I'll also ask another question. Your lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio was around 15.7, if I remember from the slide, and that's good. It's a sign of a healthy business. Typically, though, when that number goes above 5 for some industries, that can indicate a need to invest more in sales. Could you add some just color commentary on that, and I guess what are your thoughts on that ratio where it's at right now?
Yeah, well, I think that's probably what maybe Matthew was right on with his comments on this one. Fishing from the stock pond, converting at base certainly contributes to that, right? That it's easier, low cost for sure. Going forward, the reason, we will expand our sales organization, but Microsoft's right at the tip of the iceberg with their solutions. They don't have their API out. For me to go spend a bunch of money on salespeople right now to be able to not sell something for 6 months because Microsoft doesn't have their API, it doesn't make sense. You'll see it start ramping up when we can start going.
Okay, sounds good. And then the last question was, again, from Ian Castle. Could you comment on your plan or timing to file with to become SEC filing?
No, I can't, and I don't mean to be coy about that. I mean, if we're ramping things up, I know a lot of shareholders are concerned, and some have mentioned to me they don't really even invest in OTC companies. We need to make sure that we're not going to be falling back, that we're viable, getting my growth rate to where I want it to be, and when we hit those internal metrics, then we'll certainly look to make that move to NASDAQ. But okay. I don't have a timeline for you when we would do that. Okay,
great, and thank you, Ian, for that question. All right, Jerry. Well, this has been a very productive call. We appreciated it. Well, actually, we've got one more question here. We'll slide in from Matthew. Matthew's asking, how do we think about the run rate growth when we're through your on-premise conversion? Will it slow? Can it accelerate? Is it dictated by Microsoft's uptake with Office 365? And Matthew said he's not really sure how to think about how you're going to grow going forward.
Mm-hmm. No, that's we'll call it, Matthew, the great unknown. I do agree with your assessment on that. I don't really give forecast guys. I would say stay tuned as we get closer to Microsoft delivering their solutions. I will say this. I'm expecting the Microsoft initiative to be a key growth accelerator for Altigen. But I can't give you a timeline because I don't know when their solutions are going to be available, right? It's not, they say the end of this year, we'll see. But when that happens, when we're ready to roll with our solutions, I'm not going to guarantee this is going to happen, right? Because we still have to go execute. But yeah, I mean, I'm not counting on our PBX business to take us to the next level. I'm counting on our PBX business to pay the bills and our Microsoft-centric strategy along with the integrated omnichannel contact center to take us to that next level. And I'll put Fiserv into that category as well. Even they're getting closer to Microsoft. They're actually quite a large Microsoft partner, but they're actually doing some things as well that I can't disclose that are tighter with Microsoft. So as these things kick in, my objective is that to make the full conversion from where Altigen used to be to where I think we should be. over the course of the next couple of years, at the longest.
All right. Well, Jerry, thank you for your time this afternoon on the call. It's exciting to hear the growth and change in Altigen's business. I also want to thank all of the Grapevine members and participants that have called in and for your questions today. We appreciate that. I think these type of sessions are very valuable. It gives investors a chance to speak directly with you, the CEO of the company, and ask their questions and hear some more candid perspective on the company. We look forward to doing these types of calls again in the future. And just a reminder to everyone, if you enjoyed this call today, we plan to make an archive available as soon as possible on the Little Grapevine website. And if you have any further questions for Jerry or for us, please feel free to send those in via email. And with that, Jerry, I'll thank you again, and we'll look forward to talking again in the future.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, everyone, for participating. Bye-bye.
Bye.